Hi everybody, and welcome to PrepScholar Tutors 100% Your SAT Prep, or How to Optimize Your Studying. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a little bit, but we're going to take just 3 minutes to wait for folks to join if they haven't already. But in the meantime, if you are here, go ahead and comment in the chat with where you're joining from, as well as your SAT date if you already have one. I've noticed some of you guys have already gone ahead and done that, which is awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and disappear, pop up a little timer for 3 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and get rolling. All right. Thank you for your patience, everyone. And thank you, everyone who commented in the chat about where you're from, what your goal scores are, as well as what your test date is. I saw that some of you guys are taking the test tomorrow. I want to be completely honest. This webinar, this live stream is probably not going to help you very much if you're taking the test tomorrow. This is about how to optimize your study. And if your test is tomorrow, you shouldn't be studying. You should go to bed. So if that is you, this might be useful to watch back after your test. This is going to be available on our channel for about 5 days after it goes live tonight. So may want to watch that after your test date. If you do want to stick around, this will be really useful if you are planning to potentially retake after your test tomorrow. I just don't want anyone to sit here tonight if your test is tomorrow thinking that this will be particularly helpful, because probably not. So with that out of the way, I'm gonna go ahead and introduce myself. So my name is Erica, and today I'm going to be your host, your guide, through 100% your SAT prep, or how to optimize your studying by the PrepScholar Tutors team. So who I am on the writing and tutoring teams at PrepScholar. So what that means is that I write lessons, questions, and explanations for PrepScholar's online program. And then I use that online program to work one-on-one with PrepScholar tutoring students all over the world via the magic of the internet. Now, like all PrepScholar SAT writers and tutors, I have a 99th percentile SAT score, as well as years of experience teaching, and specifically teaching standardized tests. So for me, the tests that I teach are the SAT, obviously, or else I wouldn't be here, as well as the ACT, the GMAT, and the GRE, which are 2 graduate tests, so for graduate school and business school. The TOEFL, which is an English language learning test, as well as various APs, SAT2s, and just a couple other things sprinkled in there. So yeah, this is kind of my life. Now I'm gonna go ahead and make myself disappear again because I'm gonna continue being kind of the man behind the curtain, but I will still be here. All right. Now, I'm going to be asking you guys to participate in the live stream today via the chat just a little bit. This isn't a particularly participation-heavy stream, but I'm not going to be able to answer a ton of your guys' questions until the Q&A at the end. So in the meantime, if you guys do have questions, we've got Laura in the chat. Now, she is another SAT expert at PrepScholar. You guys have seen her in the chat already, and she's here to answer any burning questions that you guys have throughout the stream. Now, as a quick note, for those of you who want to use the chat, let's please keep it a useful tool by staying on topic. Now, if you guys are just here for the stream, you're not interested in using the chat, totally cool. You can always close it to avoid distraction. Now, like I mentioned before, today's free live stream is hosted by PrepScholar Tutors. Now, you guys can find out more about PrepScholar tutoring at prepscholartutors.com. It's the little link at the bottom of the slide. And we'll talk more about PrepScholar's tutoring program in a little while, but first, let's kick off our conversation about how to optimize your study with some examples of what we're trying to avoid with some bad study case studies. Ooh, all right. So, the first bad study case study. These are all based on students that I have personally worked with. Let me go ahead and turn off the little timer. All right, the first bad study case study is the one and done. So this is the student that signs up for the latest possible test date that they can. Now, they might have a variety of reasons for this. It might be a not very good reason, like they are terrified of the test and they want to put it off as long as they can. Or it might be that they're really busy and they just don't really have the time to commit to it quite yet, so they're going to put it off and put it off, even though they're never really going to have any additional time. It may be a really good reason, like they're trying to maximize their study time before they take the test. However, this is pretty dangerous because you're going to get stuck with whatever happens on test day. Now, it could be that things go really well for you on test day, in which case, congratulations. But there are a lot of reasons why you won't necessarily score as well as you want on your first test. It could be that because you haven't taken the exam before, you don't really know that your practice tests that you've been taking have not been realistic. And therefore, you are not prepared for what happens on test day. It could be that the pressure of the one test gets to you, you don't score as well as you could. Or it could be that you got sick the day before and things just didn't go as well as you wanted. And you get stuck with a score that you didn't have to get, that you could do better on another time. And you're stuck with it. So we definitely don't want to be this person. All right, our second bad study case study is the grab bag. This is one I see quite a bit, often right before students come to me for help. So the grab bag is a student who has read a lot of popular articles or seen a lot of videos that were recommended to them on YouTube, maybe some videos that we've made, maybe some articles that we've written. Maybe they've worked through about like the first third of an SAT book and they're like, yeah, okay, I've done some stuff. But overall, their prep has been pretty random, not targeted. Now, the result of this is usually that this person improves a little bit, but not a whole ton. right? And they don't really know what to do to improve better because they haven't been particularly targeted in their study. They don't know what they have done. They don't know what they haven't done. So this doesn't really set them up for success in their next retake if they do have one. All right, the final bad study case study is the more is more. This one I see a lot. All right, this is the student who has taken every practice test twice. So all 8 of the official practice tests twice, maybe some unofficial practice tests multiple times. They've drilled and drilled and drilled. They've seen every problem out there, but they haven't addressed their issues. So they keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again. Now the result, they don't improve at all. Right? It's even worse than the grab bag because all they've done is ingrained their mistakes. Potentially they improved a little bit. So they don't improve, and then they're totally burnt out when they go into retakes, and they're feeling demoralized by the fact that they've studied so much and haven't really improved at all. Now, there are a ton of other examples of bad study that I've seen. I do not have room for all of them on one slide. Definitely don't have time in the webinar to talk through all the examples of bad study that I have seen. But in all of these cases, the students tried to do SAT prep. Now, some didn't try very hard. Some tried very, very hard, but none of them prepped effectively. So how can you guys avoid becoming a bad study case study? All right, so how will this 60-minute webinar help you? This webinar is focused on how to help you guys get the most mileage out of your SAT prep. So to have a good study instead of bad study. And basically to get the most points without wasting time and effort on bad study. So another thing that we're going to talk about today, in addition to how to optimize your SAT prep, is a special offer on PrepScholar Tutors online SAT tutoring. Now the deal that we've got today is $70 off of 4 hours of tutoring, $110 off of 12 hours of tutoring, $350 off of 50 hours of tutoring. So quite a bit going on. Now there is a link on the slide as well as in the chat. If you click on that link, you're going to be taken to a page where you can see all of those discounts that I just rattled off. We are going to talk about this more later, but if you already know that you want to sign up, you can click and use this link throughout the stream. As an FYI for you guys, this link is going to expire pretty shortly after the stream, so definitely do take advantage of it when you can. Again, this stream will be posted for about 5 days after we stream it live today, so always worth it to sign up now, maybe watch the stream or bits that you missed later. So we rarely offer discounts at PrepScholar, so this is a really special opportunity. But we'll talk more about that later. A quick overview of what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to be talking about determining your target score as well as your current score. We're going to talk about setting your test dates. We're going to talk about making your study plan. We're going to talk about zooming in on your weaknesses as part of your study plan. And then we're going to do a quick little detour to talk about how PrepScholar can help with that. And then we're going to talk about prioritizing elements of your study to maximize your point gain. And then finally, we're going to have a question and answer at the end. Now this should take us probably about an hour. There is some potential that the question and answer, we're going to hit that right as we run into that hour mark. So just know that. If you do need to leave and can't stick around for the question and answer, totally cool. But we should be able to get to everything else. All right, now without further ado, jumping into determining your target score. Now, many of you guys likely have a target score already, but this section is going to help you guys ensure that your target score is based on the right factors. Can't tell you the number of students I've seen whose target score was not. So the first thing that you're going to want to do in determining your target score is to finalize your college list. So to determine the list of schools that you want to apply to. Now, really quickly, a quick note on determining your college list. Make sure that this is a realistic list. So a good college list is going to have, a couple of reach schools, 1, 2, 3, whatever. But it's also going to have a few match schools, a good healthy number of match schools. So schools where you are right around the 50th percentile. It's also going to have a couple safety schools, as well as at least one super safety. So a school that you know for sure you are getting into. So definitely make sure that your college list is good. finalize that up, and we're going to use that then to do some research. So we're going to go ahead and research your college's SAT scores. And specifically, what you're going to research is the 25th and 75th percentiles of scores for admitted students. So not just students who applied, students who were actually admitted. Now, there are a lot of places that you can go to find this information. You can find it on the school's website, so looking up each of those individual schools and hunting around for that information on your website. But if that seems like a lot of work, what you can do is go to handy dandy Google, write in your school's name, and then write in PrepScholar right after. Hit enter, and what you'll find is that we have articles for pretty much every school out there that have up-to-date information on those schools' SAT scores, GPAs, etc. Definitely take advantage of that. We've got a lot of folks working pretty tirelessly on keeping these accurate. So go ahead and do this research, 25th and 75th percentile SAT scores for admitted students at your schools. And then what you're going to do is you're going to just kind of write this down. Now, this is an SAT score target worksheet that you can find on the PrepScholar blog if you want to download it, print it off, whatever. But this is also something that you guys can make yourself on scratch paper or in Excel. So you're just going to take note of all of this information for your school. What you'll notice is that right at the bottom it says, my SAT score target, highest 75th percentile score. Now, the reason for that is that the highest 75th percentile score on your list is going to be your score goal. So what that means is that you are shooting for a score that gives you a reasonable, pretty good chance of getting into all the schools on your list. So it puts you in a pretty good position for all of those schools, including those reach schools. All right. Now, a couple of considerations that you might want to think about when determining your target score that might kind of flex things one way or the other. First thing to consider is if you have a low GPA. Now, one thing that's really useful when you're making that list of 25th and 75th percentile SAT scores is maybe also doing the same thing for GPA for admitted students to those schools. Now, again, I mean GPA for high school for admitted students, not GPA at the school for undergraduate courses. Definitely don't do that. That's not useful. So find out what the 25th and 75th percentiles of GPA are, and if you find that you're kind of on the lower end, what you probably want to do is get a higher SAT score to balance that out. There's only so much that we can do to improve our GPA in the last couple of years of school. Definitely a good idea to work on, but your SAT score is going to do a lot to help balance that out. Another thing to consider is if you are applying for scholarships. So if you have scholarship goals, if your scholarships require certain SAT scores, you need to get those scores. And those might be different from the scores that are required by those schools. So make sure that you look into that. And then a final consideration is realism. Is your score realistic given where you're starting and how much time you have? So we're going to talk about how to determine if your score is realistic over the next few slides. So we're going to come back to this. All right, now that we've determined our target score, we are going to determine our current score. Now this is pretty straightforward. If you have taken an official test or a practice test before, your most recent score is going to be your baseline. That's where you're starting out. Pretty obvious. If this was not an official test, then you do not fall into this category. You fall into the second category. Now, if you have not taken the test or an official practice test before, so even if you've taken unofficial practice tests, this is you. Your first step is going to be to take a practice test. Now, this is kind of daunting for a lot of students. A lot of folks want to get started with their study before they take a practice test because they're nervous their score is going to be bad. That's kind of the point. That is the goal here. So what we want to do is we want to figure out where we're starting, even if that's not good. Now, a couple of things to know about taking your practice test is that you want to ensure realistic conditions. So you want it to be timed. You want to take it all in one sitting. You want to try to take it in an environment that is similar to the environment you will be taking your actual test. Please do not take this sitting on your bed or sitting on a couch or sitting at the desk where you always do your homework. That's not going to put you in the right mindset to be taking a practice test. So a good place is like a conference room at a library. Some folks will go to like a parent's office if they have one, or sit at the kitchen table or something just a little bit different. So if you've ensured realistic conditions, taken your practice test, your score on that practice test is going to be your baseline or your current score. Now, why do we need to know that? Well, we're going to do some quick arithmetic. So we're going to take our target score. We are going to subtract our current score. And what that gives us is our desired point improvement, or how much we are looking to improve between now and our test day. And what that is going to do is give us some information that's really useful in setting our test dates. All right. So a bunch of you guys have already set your test date, saw that in the chat. But this is still a worthwhile section for you guys to pay attention to make sure that your test date is actually the best choice for you, as well as to see what might be appropriate for any retakes. All right, so the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to research this year's test dates. So you're going to want to find out what options are available to you. Now, there is a ton of information about this all over the internet. So this is pulled from the PrepScholar blog. These are SAT test dates for 2019 for the US. We have a similar chart for international test dates, but these are also available on the College Board website, as well as on like pretty much every test prep website out there. Make sure that you're looking at the right year, because there are other years available online. Similarly, if your test date is if your applications are due a little bit later, you might also want to look at next year. All right, so once you know what is available to you as options to take test dates, a couple really quickly notes is that you'll find that these are largely kind of clustered in the fall. There aren't as many options kind of earlier in the year during the summer, but there are quite a bit kind of in this fall zone. So just know that is kind of a trend. All right, so once you know what you're working with, you're going to figure out when you need your scores, right? When do you have to have them for any deadlines? So a useful kind of rule of thumb is that you need your scores 6 to 8 weeks before application or scholarship deadlines. So you need to take it at minimum 6 to 8 weeks before. It takes the College Board about 5 to 6 weeks to send out scores to any schools that you request on test day. Now, if you need to send out additional reports, that can take an additional couple of weeks since the 6 to 8. So this just gives you a nice safe buffer to make sure that everybody is getting your scores before those deadlines. All right, now if you thought that was it, you thought you could take it 6 weeks before your deadline and you're good, no. Right? Because we don't want to fall into that one and done trap where we get stuck with a test score that isn't ideal. So we are going to plan to retake 1 to 2 times. So we're going to plan to take the test in total 2 to 3 times, if not more. So the reason for that is that we want to make sure that if anything goes wrong on test day, if anything is surprising, we can fix that before we come back and retake again. One other thing that we want to pay attention to when we're planning for retakes is that we are not taking consecutive tests. Now, as you guys noticed when you were looking at those charts, is that many of these tests are just a month apart, right? Especially kind of toward the end of the year. That's not awesome for improving our score. One of the reasons for that is that we don't have our previous scores back by the time we're taking the test again. So we don't really know what we're working with, don't really know what we need to improve, etc. So not great for kind of calibrating our study. Similarly, it doesn't give us a ton of time to actually do any real improvements. So just a couple of weeks isn't necessarily going to do a ton, especially if we need to make major changes. So we want to give ourselves at least a couple of months between our retakes to make sure that we have time to make substantive improvements. We actually have a recommended schedule for your test dates, and you can find this on the PrepScholar blog, but I'm just going to go ahead and say that verbally. Our recommendation is to take the SAT in the fall of your junior year for the first time, take it a second time in the spring of your junior year, and then to take it a final time in the late summer or early fall of your senior year. Now, if you are already past the fall of your junior year, right, which I'm assuming a good number of you guys are already juniors, right? If that's you, that's okay. You're still going to be able to have time to take the test a couple of times before your application deadline. So if you've already missed kind of these ideal dates, you're still okay. No worries. But just know that you'll have a slightly tighter timeline there. All right. Another thing to consider when setting your test dates is your commitments. And when I say commitments, I mean yearly commitments as well as weekly commitments. So one thing I see, if you're planning on taking your test kind of in the spring, AP tests, right? Finals. Those tend to overlap with some of the SATs available to you. It's not ideal to take an SAT at the same time as your APs, or take an SAT when you're trying to study for your APs, or study for the SAT when you're taking your APs, etc. So you want to be sure to consider things like that. Similarly, if your family goes on a vacation every August, right before when the test would be, you probably don't want to take that test because you're going to have a weird break in your study immediately before the test. So you want to consider kind of big picture yearly commitments. But what you also want to do is consider your weekly commitments. So how much time reasonably do you have to set aside to study on an average week? Now, some students are going to have more time than others. If you have a job outside of school, you're probably going to have slightly less time to work with. If you participate in a lot of extracurricular activities, or you do a sport competitively, these are things to consider. Because again, they will limit the amount of study that you can do kind of on a regular basis. All right. Now that we've got all of this in mind, now we're finally going to get into the nitty-gritty. We're going to determine how much study you need to meet your target score. All right, so how are we going to do that? Now remember earlier when we came up with our point improvement, this translates to, on average, how much study you need to do to meet your goal. So if you're looking at a 0 to 30 point improvement, you're probably looking at about 10 hours of study, right? This is usually something that you can pull off without too much work, especially if you're very early in your prep and there are things that you don't know about the test quite yet. Now, if you're looking at a 30 to 70 point improvement, that's typically 20 hours of study. And again, this is good, high quality study using the principles that we're going to talk about later. If you're looking for a 70 to 130 point improvement, probably looking at about 40 hours. 130 to 200 point improvement, so it's a little more significant, 80 hours. 200 to 330, 150 plus hours. If you're looking beyond that, that's a pretty significant time commitment. You're probably looking in the range of 200 plus hours. All right, and now a couple of quick things. These are again on average. If you are earlier in your study, these points are going to come maybe a little bit quicker. If you're later in your study, already know more about the test, these points are going to come a little bit slower. Similarly, if your study is very effective, these hours will apply to you. If your study is not super effective, not as likely to apply to you. And again, if you're working with something like a tutor or with a solid prep program, again, might go a little faster than if you're working to solely self-study. So these are on average. Now that we've done this, so you've gone ahead and you've answered all of these different questions and you found out, oof, I need more study than my schedule allows. So given my test date, given that I plan to retake the test a couple of times, given my weekly commitments, given where I'm starting, I need to do more study than I conceivably can, realistically, in the time that I have before my test. All right, what are we gonna do? Well, the first thing that we're going to consider is adjusting your commitments. So going in and going, all right, maybe these need to be tweaked a little bit. Maybe I need to scale back some of the stuff that I'm doing to improve my SAT score, given that the SAT score is probably the most important thing that you can improve right now to increase your chances of getting into college. So we might be able to adjust our commitments to allow for that extra time. Now, if we really can't do that, we might want to think about adjusting our target score. So maybe it is just not realistic for us to do what we're looking to do. In that case, we might need to kind of go, all right, maybe I need to kind of scale this back, maybe adjust my school list accordingly. Now, this is not something that, we love to do. It is something that we do want to be realistic about. One other thing that is not on this slide that you do want to take into consideration is that oftentimes we can kind of ramp up this pace if we get help. So to make our study as effective as possible. So we're going to talk about how to make your study really effective, but it's always going to be more effective if you have an expert on your team. So looking at something like PrepScholar tutoring or PrepScholar's online program can help to make something that seems maybe a little bit less doable, maybe a little more doable. But again, if you're really, really off, consider adjusting your goals. All right. Now that we've set our test date, we are going to make our study plan. All right, so how do we do this? So we're gonna go ahead and divide those total study hours that we determined in the last section into weekly study hours. So again, we know that there are some weeks where study just isn't really gonna happen. That's okay, maybe during our APs, we're doing only a couple hours of study a week. That's all right, but we wanna go ahead and determine how many hours we should study on a regular week consistently to make our test happen. Consistency is a huge, huge, huge deal in study, and we're going to get a lot more mileage out of studying consistently for, say, 10 hours a week than we're going to get for skipping 3 weeks and then studying 40 hours in 1 week. So we're going to find out the weekly study hours we need to commit. And then we're also going to go ahead and plan for when we're going to do those hours on a weekly basis. The more we can do to schedule those in advance, the better, because the more likely we're going to stick to it. We are also going to plan for one official practice test around every 2 or 3 weeks. Now, there are 8 official practice tests available, which means that we're looking at about 16 weeks. 16 to 24 weeks with our official practice test. So in a lot of cases, that's going to get us straight through to our test day. If it doesn't, what we may want to do, we might want to extend that schedule just a little bit, so take them a little bit less frequently, but we don't want to go much less frequently than every 3 weeks. What we might also want to do is branch into some unofficial practice tests. So this leads us to our next point, is we're going to gather our study materials. So the best of the best is going to be official stuff. So the official practice tests, there are 7 of them, which is awesome. So we definitely want to go ahead and use those. But the second best study materials are those that are accurate but not official. So when you're gathering your study materials, determining what you want to use, make sure to do your research to make sure that they are really legitimately high quality, that they are up to date for the current version of the test, and that they cover all of the skills that are available. So PrepScholar, for instance, we take great pains to make sure that it is as good as it gets outside of official materials. All right, now once we've kind of divided this out into a weekly study plan, we've planned for one official practice test every 2 weeks, we've broken out when that's going to be, written it down on a calendar, we've gotten our study materials ready to go, we're going to figure out what specifically we need to focus on a week-to-week basis. And this is what's going to make up the actual meat of our study plan. But we are going to talk about how to figure out what you need to focus on after a little break. So we're gonna go ahead and take a 3-minute water break. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off my audio, pop up a 3-minute timer, and when we'll be back, we will talk about zooming in on your weaknesses. We're gonna talk about how PrepScholar can help you zoom in on your weaknesses. And then we're gonna talk about prioritizing different aspects of your study to maximize your point gain. I will see you guys soon. And as a quick reminder for those of you who are still here, the discount link is live on the screen. If you want to go ahead and take that opportunity to use it, to get one of those discounts that's currently available for PrepScholar tutoring, go ahead and use that now. This is a great opportunity. All right, folks, welcome back. We're going to go ahead and get back rolling, starting with zooming in on your weaknesses. So when we left off, we were talking about making your SAT study plan, and we were talking about how to make sure that your study plan is focused on you and on what you need to work on. And how we figure out what you need to work on is by figuring out what kinds of mistakes you are making. So if you go back to our case studies, right, we had our guy who was doing the grab bag, right, who was just looking at random stuff, hoping that they were going to find the thing that was going to help them, right? And we also had the guy who was the more is more, right, who was just doing everything under the sun, but not really focusing on what they were getting wrong, right? Both of them were facing the same issue. They were both suffering from the same mistake, which is that they weren't looking at their weaknesses. They weren't zooming in on what they needed to focus on. Now, mistakes are your most valuable study tool. A lot of folks really hate making mistakes, and they are super distressed by taking like their first practice test because it's not good, right? And if they don't do very well on a quiz, they don't feel great about it. Even if they do pretty well on a quiz, they don't look at the ones they miss because they don't really want to see it. They want to focus on what they did well on. Similarly, they like to study things where they're feeling like they can, really get the hard questions. But this is a really huge mistake, right? Not looking at your mistakes is a massive mistake because the mistakes are where we're going to get points. So we want to make sure that we are really focusing in our study on our mistakes, that we are spending at least 50% of our time on reviewing our mistakes. So for each mistake that you make, whether that's on a practice test, in a practice quiz, in a drill, in anything that you are doing, we want to make sure that we sufficiently analyze those mistakes. So we want to go, okay, what was the mistake I made, right? Now, sometimes it's a content mistake, right? Sometimes we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know a formula. Okay, pretty simple. Or maybe we got lost at a certain point. Maybe we ran out of time. Maybe we didn't read the question right, right? Maybe we had messy scratch paper. So we're going to go, okay, what was the mistake? And then we're going to try to figure out, okay, but why did I make it? Did I make it because I didn't follow my protocol for actively reading the question? Did I make it because I didn't have sufficient time to outline the formulas? Did I do it because I jumped too quickly into math before I really read and understood the question? Did I make it because I was all over the place with my scratch work and I didn't cross something out that I was supposed to, and then I looked at it later and it just really messed us up, right? So why did I make that mistake? Then finally, we're going to try to figure out, okay, how can I fix that mistake for next time? So not just, okay, how do I fix the mistake on this problem? How do I get it right? But how do I, on a similar problem next time, recognize that it's a similar problem, recognize that I might make that same mistake, and then respond to that realization in a way that I do not make the same mistake again? This is a really in-depth process, right? We are digging deep into these mistakes. And what I find a lot of students do is they don't even get past the first question. They might, but a lot of students I see, they maybe read an explanation for how to get the problem right, and they're going, okay, cool, wash their hands of it and move right along. But they haven't actually addressed what they did wrong. And that means that they're just going to make the same mistake again and again and again and strengthen those bad habits, just like the more is more case study. So our goal with our mistakes is that we are going to make that mistake once and we are going to be stoked on it, right? We are going to be so happy we've made this mistake because it's an opportunity to learn. But once we've learned from it, our goal is to never make that mistake again. If we make that mistake a second time, okay, it's really important, right? If we've repeated a mistake, that's what we really want to focus on in our study. We want to maybe work on that tomorrow, maybe put a little sticky note on our laptop to really focus on that. But we do not want to make it multiple times because that signifies that we're just making a habit out of it. Now, what we're going to want to do is then when we're making these mistakes is to use our missed questions to make and adjust our study plan. So when we make mistakes in that first practice test, we're going to use that to go, okay, this is what I'm going to focus my time on, right? So if we find, all right, my math score is significantly lower than my reading and writing score, and then within reading and writing, my reading score is significantly lower than my writing score, that's going to tell us, okay, I am predominantly going to prioritize math, and then after that, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on reading than on writing. I'm going to hit a little bit of everything, but I'm going to make sure that I spend my time appropriately in one place over another. I might also find, okay, I have problems with time management on the math, so I'm going to make sure that I am focusing on that. I might find, oh, I'm having some trouble with interpreting questions for rhetorical writing questions. I'm going to make sure that I spend time dealing with that issue. I might find that I am doing poorly with exponent rules. I'm going to focus on those. So we are going to use our missed questions to figure out what we're going to study over the course of our SAT prep. What we're also going to find is that if we continue to make certain mistakes or we uncover new mistakes, we're going to adjust our study plan as we go so that we are dealing with those mistakes and not focusing on areas where we're already doing pretty good, right? And we don't need to focus our time. This is why options like an SAT prep course or going straight through a book are not always necessarily helpful. They can be if you're at like a pretty early level in your prep and you're just trying to get a good lay of the land, figure out what's going on. But what you're going to find is that a lot of that is going to be focused on areas that you don't need, especially if you're already scoring pretty high, and especially if you have a limited time to improve your score. So what we can do to make our study most effective, most efficient, is focus only on the things that you are struggling with. Now, if that sounds awful, you have no idea how you are going to figure out what types of problems you're missing, if you're not sure that you can recognize what your weaknesses are, and even if you do recognize your weaknesses, you're not sure that you have the time or the energy or the capability to build out a reasonable study plan and then adjust it as you go. If that's you, you may want to get help. Now, a really great resource is PrepScholar. Now, how can PrepScholar help? We're going to go ahead and close out our slide deck and take a look at what PrepScholar looks like. All right, so the foundation of PrepScholar SAT tutoring is the PrepScholar SAT online program. Now, our online program is customized to individual students. So before you start, you're going to go ahead and answer questions about your goals and your test date and take a diagnostic. Basically, everything that was on those slides about setting your test date, about determining your current score, your goal score, etc. Right? Now, PrepScholar is going to use that information from your diagnostic and from that little quiz thing that you did to build weekly study schedules of lessons, quizzes, and practice tests that lead right up to your test day. And they're going to adjust those weekly assignments based on your progress in the program, depending on what you get right, what you get wrong. So again, zooming in on your weaknesses. So the goal is for you to be focused on exactly the right skills at exactly the right level at any given time in your personal study plan. So even if you're not using PrepScholar, this should be the goal, that you are coming up with something like this every week. Now, this is a pretty intense one, right? This is not 4 hours worth of study. This is because this is my instructor account. But you would be coming up with a few different topics to focus on. So this is the dashboard. So this is where you would see your assignments for the week. And let's go ahead and look at one of these quizzes. So let's go ahead and look at coordinate geometry. Now, the lessons are designed to teach you the content that you need to answer questions of this skill with a ton of interactivity in various formats. So there are videos like this one. There are drill questions like this one, where you can submit an answer. There are going to be practice questions. there are going to be written explanations, etc., etc. So this means that you're going to have the highest likelihood of understanding as much of the lesson as possible on your own, no matter your learning style. Now, after you finish the lesson, you're going to go ahead and rate it and take the quiz. Now, these quizzes are going to be timed, and they're going to test your understanding of what you saw in the lesson using a realistically timed quiz featuring questions of this skill in the style of the real SAT. Now, depending on your performance on this quiz, your level on the skill is going to be adjusted. So you can see that here. So that the next time you see that skill, it's going to be at the right time and at the right difficulty level. So again, this is what you would be doing on your own if you weren't working with PrepScholar or with a tutor. Now, so your skill is going to be, your level on each skill is going to be adjusted. So we see that in math, I have quite a bit more core than I do in reading. In writing, I've got mastery on one of these skills. Awesome, so I'm ready to go. Now this is where PrepScholar tutoring comes in. So let's go ahead and go to a quiz that I maybe didn't do so hot on. So for skills that you didn't level up on, or even ones that you did but still had questions on, you can review them one-on-one with an SAT expert tutor. So using live video call technology, along with screen sharing, document cameras, and shared access to your PrepScholar online account, your tutor can further explain concepts from the lessons, work with you through problems from quizzes, and provide additional resources catered to you, your learning style, and the issues that you're facing. So for instance, one of my favorite features to use with my students is the flag function. So I happened to write this question as well as this explanation, but let's just pretend that I didn't, right? So when a student reviews their quiz question with the written or video explanations for each question, but still isn't totally sure what they did wrong or why they did it wrong or how to fix that issue, right? Their what, why, how, I'm gonna have them flag that question. So they'll pop a little flag on it. And then I can see that flag. So that way I can see in advance of the session what that student is struggling with the most and then plan our sessions accordingly. So the result is going to be an extremely personalized test prep experience where you're always working on the most important material for you, zooming in on your weaknesses, and where you're going to be supported at every step. All right. Now, if this sounds good to you, if you're interested in improving the quality of your SAT prep, we've again got a special tutoring sale just for the guests at this webinar. So again, that sale is going to be $70 off 4 hours of tutoring, $110 off 12 hours of tutoring, and $350 off 50 hours of tutoring. We also have $40 off our complete prep, which is the online program only. So you still get that customized study program. You just don't get the individualized support of a one-on-one tutor. Now, the best part about this is that you get 1 hour of risk-free tutoring within 60 days of purchase. Now, what that means is that you're going to be charged immediately for your purchase, but if after your first hour of tutoring you decide not to continue with it, you can still get a refund. So if you've done less than 10 hours in the online program, you'll get a full refund and your program will be closed. If you've done 10 or more hours in the online program, you'll get a refund for the tutoring portion, but not the complete prep. And that complete prep account will remain active for your use. So that's a lot of information, but basically, if you try out PrepScholar tutoring and it's not for you, you don't have to pay. And again, you get a full 60 days to use that first hour. So if you aren't quite ready to start yet, you don't have to miss out on this special discount. So again, this offer expires shortly after the live stream ends, so I encourage you to sign up now using the link on the screen and in the chat. Now, even if that means missing the rest of our live stream, like I mentioned before, this is going to be posted on our YouTube channel for 5 days, so you can watch the rest within those 5 days. Now, if you're interested, go ahead and sign up. Link is in the chat, but for now, we're going to go ahead and move on to prioritizing for maximum point gain. All right, so we saw in our last section that we are prioritizing our weaknesses, right? We're focusing on the things that we are missing, but we're not just doing that. We're trying to prioritize the most important weaknesses. So the weaknesses that have the most point value on the test, what's going to get us the most improvement in our score. So what does that mean? We've broken down the main reasons that students miss questions into a few categories, and we're going to talk about them. So one of the first mistakes, one of the first weaknesses that students struggle with that really miss them a lot of points is timing. Right? If your timing is not in order, you're likely not finishing the section. You're likely missing a bunch of questions that you just didn't have time to get to that you likely could have gotten if you did have time. So if you are dealing with timing issues, that's going to be really high priority for you to figure out. So skills regarding skipping questions, coming back to questions, things that involve making sure to read the question effectively, spend enough time on your question, maybe save on calculations, for reading, figuring out how to skim effectively, how to make predictions, etc. So timing is going to be extremely important to maximize your point gain. All right, another area of weakness that is going to be really important is carelessness. All right, this is something that's often closely related to timing. Even when students aren't behind, there is a fair amount of time pressure that you guys are going to feel in this test, and that can lead to being careless, right? What I see a lot, a question asks you to solve for y. The student reads the question, totally interprets it right, goes through the question, solves for everything, bing, bang, boom, puts their answer in, and they solve for x. They didn't solve for y. Oof, and they miss the question because the test makers know they're going to make that mistake, and they put in x as an answer choice. Carelessness. Similarly, doing all your math right and then just losing a 0. Carelessness is one of the most frustrating mistakes to make, but it's one that we can fix really easily by just adding simple checks on our work to make sure, hey, does that make sense? Wait, am I answering the right question? Wait, did I read that question right? Did I miss something? To make sure that we are not making these careless errors. So if you're finding that you're making a lot of these, this is something that we definitely want to prioritize to make sure that we gain the most points. Another area, comprehension. So this is not a careless error. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of what the question is asking, or a fundamental misunderstanding perhaps of the passage. If we are dealing with this, again, this is a strategy issue for the most part. It means that maybe we are going too quickly through the stuff that we need to understand that is particularly important for our solving. So we want to make sure if we are having issues of comprehension where we go, oh, wait, I totally know how to solve later, but I read this question completely wrong. If we are finding that that is an issue for us, we want to deal with that pretty effectively. That's something that we want to prioritize. All right, now once we've dealt with those three things, those are fundamentals. Then we get into content, right? Now content, this is where we can do a lot of prioritization. So when we are working on our content, we're going to find that certain topics appear more frequently than others on the SAT. For instance, I find a lot of people really freaking out about trig, right? They're going, oh man, that was a really hard class for me, or that is a really hard class for me, and I am nervous about it, and I really want to spend a lot of time on it. And it turns out that there really aren't that many questions on trig on the SAT. And what they do is they ignore some more fundamental areas like maybe ratios and proportions, word problems, to focus on trigonometry, and it gains them far fewer points, right? So when we are focusing on our content, which again is kind of below timing, carelessness, and comprehension, so more kind of strategy-based issues in importance. When we are dealing with content, we also want to make sure that we are prioritizing within content what is the most important thing to focus on. So which topics appear most frequently and will get us the most points. A thing to consider here is that every question is worth the same number of points. So whether that's a complicated word problem or a more difficult problem at the end of the section, or a really easy problem at the beginning of the section, or a grid-in versus a multiple choice, whatever, every question is going to be worth the same. So we want to make sure that we are maximizing the number of questions we get right, not the difficulty of the questions that we are getting right. So focusing on the topics that appear the most frequently is going to give us the most benefit. Ideally, we're going to hit all of the topics that we're struggling with, but that doesn't always happen. So we want to start with the most important ones. Now, if you're not sure which topics appear most frequently, the PrepScholar blog has a lot of information on this, so I highly recommend checking it out, doing a little Google search, and you will be able to find which pieces of content show up most frequently. There's also a ton of other really good articles out there for learning about this. Excellent. So, prioritizing for maximum point gain, we're going to focus on the things that will get us the most points. Now again, how can PrepScholar help with this? Now you can definitely do this on your own, but this is a lot of work. I'm saying this from experience as someone who literally does this for a living. So how can PrepScholar help? Now, PrepScholar can help by taking the guesswork out of building your study schedule. So all that stuff we talked about before the break. The customized study schedule from PrepScholar's online program and further customization from your PrepScholar tutor ensures that you're going to be working on the concepts you most need to in your personal study at all times, and make sure that that leads appropriately up to your test day. Similarly, PrepScholar is going to help you focus on the most important weaknesses to help you get the most points with the least time and effort. So the ability to review missed questions with a detailed explanation in PrepScholar's online program, plus further review one-on-one live with the tutor, gives you the opportunity to home in on your mistakes and then fix those mistakes before they become a habit. And then finally, PrepScholar helps by providing the peace of mind that comes from having expert backup. So everyone at PrepScholar, from the writers and creators behind our online program to your personal tutor, is going to be an SAT and educational expert. So you can rest easy knowing that you have 24/7 access to the best test content, the best test strategy, and the best study strategy. So again, if you are still working on your SAT prep, and especially if you know that you're looking at a significant desired point improvement, I highly recommend that you take advantage of that special discount and that 1 hour of risk-free tutoring by signing up for PrepScholar tutoring now. So you're gonna go ahead and click that link. So either copying it from the slide or clicking on it in the chat. And then what you're going to do after you click the link is you're going to enter your email, select the package you're interested in, and submit. And then you're just going to follow the instructions on the screen. So it's 2 steps, really easy. You're going to sign up for the package on PrepScholarTutors.com, and then you're going to email us so that we can process your discount. But be sure that you follow the instructions carefully so that we can be totally sure that we get you that discount. So again, there is nothing to lose here. There are a lot of SAT points to gain and hours of wasted study that you can save. So I highly encourage you to click that link and sign up now. Now we're gonna go ahead and leave that link up on the screen. But we're going to go ahead and do our Q&A. So we're going to take about 10 to 15 minutes for Q&As. Any questions that you guys have about the topics in this webinar or about PrepScholar tutoring or about today's special discount, you can go ahead and share those in the chat. Now this is also a really great opportunity to sign up for that discount. If you guys have any issues with the sign up process, you can also share those in the chat and we will help you troubleshoot. Now I'm going to go ahead and pop my face back up. Hello. So like I mentioned, you can sign up for those discounts now. If you do not have the opportunity to sign up now, if you need to go, that's okay. This discount will be live for 24 hours after this ends. So it should be live either until 8:30 or 9 tomorrow. So 8:30 or 9 Eastern tomorrow. Laura, if you'd share in the chat if that's 8:30 or 9, that would be really helpful. And you will be able to access that. We're also going to post this live stream on our channel. It will be available for 5 days. So if you do need to go, again, thank you for being here. This will be available for 5 days. But that discount, only 24 hours. All right, let me go ahead and take a look at your questions. Let's see. So it's 9 p.m. tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern. Someone says, would the PrepScholar program help if I need to increase 300 points if I'm taking the SAT in June? That would definitely help. That is an ambitious score increase. So as you probably noticed, that that was kind of on the higher end of our score improvements. That was looking at like 150 plus hours. So that is significant, but it's a great score goal. It's definitely easier to get through that. Make sure you're staying motivated, make sure you're staying on target, etc. If you do have a tutor to work with, as well as if you do have that customization. So that just takes a bunch of the weight off of your shoulders. It's a lot of work to plan your study. Not having to do that is really nice, especially when you also have a lot of stuff going on in your life, which I know that you guys do at this point. Would test prep such as Magoosh help? Yeah, for sure. Any test prep is going to be helpful. Definitely before you commit to something, make sure that it is realistic and that it is helpful for you. It would also be useful to kind of research how adaptive their programs are. So the PrepScholar program is a customized program that is catered to you. I'm not sure that that's the same thing for Magoosh. So you'll be required a lot more to figure out what is important for you and then to kind of balance accordingly. So do your research and determine how much work you're willing to put in, as well as to determine if the materials are high enough quality that you feel comfortable using them. Is there any chance to get this discount for the SAT, ACT combined with the 1 hour free tutoring? So right now we're offering it for the SAT, not for the ACT. You can get, if you purchase any of the tutoring packages, you will get that 1 hour of tutoring. If you just purchase the complete prep, you will not get that 1 hour of tutoring. So if you, if you want to kind of cheat the system, what you could do is you could purchase the tutoring, take your 1 hour of free tutoring, and then go, no, that's not for me, and then cancel the rest of your package. I don't recommend doing that, and I don't find that many people do because they really do like the tutoring and find it particularly helpful. One thing that I recommend is if you're not sure if you want to commit to it, is maybe signing up for like the 4 hour package, which is a little bit less of a commitment. And then what that does is that you can then decide if you want to purchase more afterward. Okay. What's the discount? How long is it for? You can just click on the link and it will show you. So again, I'll just say that out loud. It's going to be $70 off 4 hours of tutoring, $110 off of 12 hours of tutoring, and $350 off of 50 hours of tutoring, as well as $40 off of our complete prep. So again, all of those tutoring packages also come with that complete prep that I showed you guys in the webinar. That is the discount. It is available for 24 hours. These are pretty rare for us. All right. I keep making mistakes on the reading section, even if I analyze them afterwards. How can I stop making them, considering that every question is always different? One thing that I would recommend is stop thinking of every question as different. They are, yes, all different. They are not the same question. They are based on new passages. They are, asking about different things. But what you'll notice if you spend more time with these questions is that there are really limited types of questions that this test asks. In fact, for the reading section, there are not that many different question types. In PrepScholar, we have, let me figure out how many we have in PrepScholar. In PrepScholar, we have broken the reading section out into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 skills. And that's it. And that covers literally every question in the reading section. So if you're thinking about them as all different, you're reinventing the wheel for every single question, and that's not super helpful. So what you want to try to do is try to categorize your weaknesses, right? So for every question, going in and doing that process of asking what, why, how is going to help you kind of narrow down what it is that you're missing. A really useful tool, especially for reading, is pay attention to how the questions are phrased, right? That's going to help you kind of narrow down what those different question topics are. and help you figure out if there are certain question types that you're struggling with or certain passage types that you're struggling with, etc. I find that students typically aren't missing random questions. They're missing them according to trends. So if you really are struggling to analyze those trends, something like PrepScholar would be really, really useful for helping you figure out where it is that you're struggling and focus on those areas. Similarly, working with a tutor, they can help figure out strategies that are appropriate for you and you personally and the mistakes that you are making to help you figure out how to fix those. If you aren't really in the financial space to pay much at all for test prep, but you may need one-on-one help, what do you recommend? That's really tough. Definitely the more personalized your prep gets, the more expensive it is. So prep that is not personalized is going to be less expensive than prep that is personalized. One-on-one tutoring prep is probably going to put you out a few $100s no matter what, especially if you're looking for someone who's qualified to be giving you that kind of help. So what I would recommend if you are not in the financial place for that, which is totally cool, and a very common concern that we hear, would be maybe sign up for like the PrepScholar program. The PrepScholar program is significantly less expensive, but it gives you a lot of the benefits of working with a tutor, which is that customization, as well as expert explanations, with a lower price because you're not working directly one-on-one with an individual. So I would highly recommend that for you. Again, it's still a decent chunk of change, but we do have this discount going on right now. I highly recommend checking that out if you are looking for that one-on-one kind of benefit, but don't necessarily want to shell out for that one-on-one benefit. It's really useful. It's the whole reason I joined PrepScholar, is because I thought that it was a really great program. All right. Don't some colleges count how many times you take the SAT though? Kind of. So what we don't want to do is take the test 8 times and then not improve at all over the course of those tests. If we take the test like 2 or 3 times and show improvement along the way, we're good to go. One thing also to consider is that with score choice, you get to choose which scores go to schools. Some schools will require you to send in all of your scores, so bear that in mind, but not all schools. In fact, not most schools. So know that. You're good to take a couple to a few times. Again, like your school GPA, we want to show improvement. So we want to show improvement with your test scores. Yeah, best way to increase your reading score using PrepScholar is just to follow the program. It really does make it incredibly easy, where you're given exactly what you need on your dashboard. If you just do what is assigned to you, you will make the most improvement possible. If you want to make even more improvement, working with a tutor is a really great way to kind of make sure that even beyond those written explanations, you're getting really specific feedback on your errors. So those explanations, we do our very best as writers and tutors and teachers to figure out where most students do make mistakes and where most students do get confused, and include those in our explanations, whether those are written explanations or video explanations. But if you did something weird, or something that didn't get addressed, a tutor can help with that, or can also further clarify if it wasn't explained in a way that you understood. How do you focus on one part of the test without losing skill on another part? That's a really useful thing. Again, PrepScholar is a really great tool for that because it's going to kind of do a balance where you're doing a little bit in every area, but primarily focusing on the things where your skills are the lowest. If you are doing it on your own, I recommend trying to do just a little bit of everything, making sure not to go like a whole 2 or 3 weeks without kind of touching on one of those other sections, to make sure you aren't losing your skills there. Similarly, taking regular practice tests is going to make sure that you do kind of stay up to speed on your skills, and you can't really lose anything without your practice tests suffering. So what I typically recommend is, like, in a given week saying, okay, I'm going to spend like 2/3 of my time on math, and then I'm going to spend this much time on reading, this much time on writing. And again, you can build out like a whole schedule for the week. So on Monday, I do 2 hours of X, and then on Wednesday, I do an hour of Y, blah, blah, blah. And that can really help to make sure you're getting a good balance. But yeah, I see a lot of students who are like, yeah, I'm just going to spend a whole 2 months on math. Typically don't recommend that. Okay, Laura answered that one. I'm going to be a senior in the year 2019 to 2020. Will I have time to take the SAT in August and October? That's going to totally depend on you and your schedule. August and October, that's not too close to each other. That's about as close as I would push it. Yes, you can do that. Recognize that you are going to be quite busy at that time of year with putting together applications, as well as, making sure that your senior year is strong. So realistically, you can, theoretically you can, realistically, you're going to have to assess your own schedule and see if that's a good idea for you. But yes, the answer, if you're not applying early decision or early action or to UC schools, that is enough time to get in by the deadline. I need more practice tests before I took all of the 8 official tests. Where do I find more tests? So it sounds like you are a more is more student. No shame in that. Slow down is my main thing. You cannot keep taking practice tests at the rate that you are taking them because it's not helpful, and likely a lot of your mistakes are habits at this point. So stop is the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is that there are a few more official practice tests floating around the internet, things that were released as question and answer service SATs. You can find them if you look. So I'd recommend Googling to see what's available. Various forums have them available for download. There's probably like 4 or so out there for other official tests. Take a look at those. Additionally, if you need more beyond that, I recommend looking at other prep companies' practice tests, but know that they will not be as accurate as the real test. PrepScholar does not offer any official practice tests. Our program PrepScholar does not offer any of our own practice tests. We exclusively use official practice tests because those are the best, right? And we use all of our own problems for the quizzes, the stuff that you will be doing as maintenance throughout the week. So none that we can provide. Do your research on which companies are the best. We have some really great articles on PrepScholar on where to get additional practice tests if you need them. Does PrepScholar offer any past QAs for SAT? Nothing that has not been released on the internet. So we do not have them in our program. You should Google is what I'm recommending. There are things that are available online that have been uploaded. Look for them, but there is nothing that PrepScholar has that you cannot access yourself. Scrolling back a little, is there a PrepScholar like Reddit page or community section to ask questions, give students advice, tips on the SATs or ACTs? Yeah, comments in the blogs or Expert Hub is really great. We also have our channel, right? This channel right here, where we do live streams as well as videos. You can comment there and someone will typically get back to you with your questions. So if you do have questions, this is a great place to ask. All right, I think that's about it. Let's see. Oh, there is one more. How do I find appropriate resources to address the mistakes that I encounter? That's really great. So with official materials, there are not amazing explanations for those. So College Board does offer some kind of minimalistic explanations, but they don't go much beyond this one's right and this one's wrong, and it's wrong because it's wrong, and it's right because it's right. So that's not super helpful. If you are looking to go totally free, there are various forums that you can look for, but it will take time to have to kind of sift through what's good and what's bad. Now, if you want to work with something like PrepScholar, PrepScholar has detailed explanations for every single question in PrepScholar. So that means if you are finding that you are struggling, there will be an explanation that will likely deal with exactly the thing that you personally dealt with, the issue that you faced. Another thing that's really useful is working with a tutor, because then you can ask exactly the questions that you want to ask and get exactly the answer that you want answered. Now, if you're trying to deal with mistakes that are kind of more general, like things about timing, things about comprehension, about careless mistakes, there are a lot of really good articles and resources and videos out there. I highly recommend the PrepScholar blog. Again, that is free. I also recommend our channel right here. Again, that is free, but kind of like I mentioned, you can get into kind of the danger zone of being the grab bag student where you're just like passively consuming content, but you're not targeting those mistakes and you're not necessarily applying what you're learning. So make sure that you are doing that in a targeted fashion. Again, the best way to do that is to work with a customized program like PrepScholar and with a one-on-one tutor. Let's see. It looks like for the most part, we have answered all of these questions. If you're looking, okay, that's great. That's already answered. When will the registration for the August test open? Just Google SAT test dates 2019 PrepScholar, and you will get a really great PrepScholar article on that topic. Google is your friend, is what I recommend for that one. So that chart that I had earlier in the slides is something that is available on the PrepScholar website. It's also available on College Board. Not something I know off the top of my head. Okay, I think we've answered about all of the questions in the chat. If you have anything else, you should probably add those real quickly because we're about to close out. If you have any other questions that you want to ask, when we post this live stream as a video on our channel in just a couple of hours, you can leave a comment on the video and we'll try to get back to you. Again, this video will be live for 5 days after today, and then we're going to take it off the channel. And this discount that is still on the screen is going to be available for 24 hours, so it will be available until 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, which is Tuesday, April 9th. So please do take advantage of it. It is a really great opportunity, and it's, again, risk-free. So thank you so much for being here today. And if you guys have any questions, please do leave those in the comments. So thanks for being here. Best of luck with your SAT study, and hopefully we will see you guys soon. Oh, wait, and before we go, one last thing that I wanted to mention. We have a new webinar coming up next week about SAT essay and how to prepare for that. How important it is, how much weight to put on that. So if you do want to see that, that should be next week, same time. You can check out the chat for how to sign up for that. So again, thank you for showing up. Hopefully we will see you guys next week for the essay. If not, please do subscribe to this channel for some really great videos. Thanks again. Good luck. See you guys soon.